All right.
Yeah.
So, hi, Mihyun. It's so good to
Hi.
see you. And thank you for being willing to give us some of your time to talk about
Hmm.
your work.
Yeah.
I want to introduce for the people who are watching
Hmm.
just a little bit about you, and then you can fill in more for us.
Yeah.
But Mihyun is a 2022 IMS graduate and is a registered somatic movement therapist, as well as an associate marriage and family therapist, a dancer, and of course, a certified Laban movement analyst. Um, and so I'd love for you to share with us just a little bit about yourself and
Hmm.
anything you want to share, and some about the work that you do
Hmm.
in the world.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Mihyun Lee. I grew up in South Korea and moved to United States in 2019. And after I moved here, my identity as an immigrant was the biggest identity that I have. And now I developed many different strong identities, including mother of three kids and then professional dancer, and also associate marriage and family therapist, and then registered somatic movement therapist, and also adoptee. I was adopted in South Korea and grew up in South Korea. And I just slowly discovering my identity as an adoptee since I started this program.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, yeah, thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
So, recently you did a workshop in Korea with
Hmm.
adoptees, fellow
Hmm.
adoptees.
Right. Yeah.
I'm so curious if you could just share, whatever you feel like you could,
Hmm.
about maybe your approach, like how
Hmm.
you built that workshop, um,
Hmm.
and maybe like a little sneak peek into any of the experiences that you
Hmm.
facilitated, and if it
Hmm.
feels possible, like some outcomes.
Hmm. Yeah. So my approach, I would call it as a kinesio psychotherapy because I studied dance first in South Korea, Korean dance. Then after I moved here, I studied somatic psychology in counseling psychology program. And then after that, I studied Laban movement analysis. So I feel like the dance is more bottom to top approach, and psychotherapy, even though it's somatic psychology, I felt like it was top down.
Mm,
And the Laban movement analysis, that's like middle. So in the Laban movement analysis, we have the symbol of human and figure eight, what is that? Horizontal, the vertical way. And then in the middle, we have line, which is developmental movement symbol for the lower body and upper body connection.
yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at, meaning I feel like my verbal and non-verbal aspect of self and also expression is combined or balanced with the Lava Martinez movement analysis studies. So I feel pretty stable and I feel like I'm growing, about to grow and about to integrate myself with two different studies I had. And I feel stable with that study and the integration of self throughout the study.
Mm,
And when I was in the program, I struggled a lot with my identity as an immigrant, but mostly person of color,
mm,
because there was a difference between immigrant and person of color, and I associate myself as an immigrant, not much about POC, person of color. But in United States, my color, my color of skin, and my existence would be recognized as a person of color,
mm,
even though I personally don't have much of the racial experience here. So I was struggle with it, and then the kind of struggle led me to think about my experience as an adoptee.
mm,
Feel isolated, feel lonely, feel uh, not knowing where to belong, and how to find myself in these two different, at least two different parents' coexistence, like between biological parents who I don't know and adoptive parents and family. So yeah, throughout this study, I was able to engage with myself, the true self, that what's me, what I want to be or what I want to become. And I feel like I'm becoming more about myself, even though I don't have the specific description of the self.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel very integrated, and then that motivates me to approach to uh, American adoptees, meaning overseas adoptees. I was adopted domestically, so they had a different experience, but also I only had a how can I say, access to overseas adoptees, especially in United States, because I am here in United States, not in Korea. So, and also in Korea, there are not many adoptees group to kind of find a sense of belonging or a community, even though now there are many, but most of organizations and nonprofit organizations are focused on supporting overseas adoptees. So I feel like I'm in the middle between domestic adoptees and then overseas adoptees. This is kind of a life theme for me. I always happen to be in the middle of two different parties. Yeah. And then I often struggle, but also I feel kind of content to be in the middle to have both access. Yeah. So there's a kind of challenge and negative aspect, but also I often find satisfaction from that position. Yeah. And also find the integration. So yeah, I started to approach American, Korean American adoptees, and then so this year in July, I attended International Korean adoptee associations. So there were like over about 500 people gathered at the conference, and I offered experiential workshop for 3 hours for 90 minutes for two different groups. Wow. The outcome was great. First of all, being in the space with other adoptees, even though we have different cultural experience, me from Korean culture, they have American culture, but also European, different countries influence. But just being in the space with shared identity in Korea, because they departed from South Korea, the country, the original country, breathe together was such a great experience for me. I felt a lot of sadness. I felt a lot of satisfaction at the same time. And I just facilitated in a kind of neutral way, not necessarily speak about, we are experiencing abandoned issues or trust issues and things like that. I did not speak about it. But what I did the most satisfying and easy access to our emotion or feelings was practicing approaching reaching our hands in a different place, forward and backwards and side, up and down. And with that spatial approach with reach, I incorporate as pulling, reach and pull, and reach and pull in any direction. I just simply suggest them to reach and pull in a different direction. And then I added another layer by saying, when you reach, you think about what was your unfulfilled need. And then when you pull that into yourself, just feel how you feel when you finally fulfilled your desire and need that you couldn't have in the past. And then as you can see, the process, the pace was changed, and the way they approached to the space felt different. Yeah. So even though the movement was simple at the first time, with the layer, they were able to engage with themselves. So in the Lava Baltinic movement analysis, we speak about in and out. So
Yeah.
we were out just perhaps expressive.
Hmm.
And then we brought that in,
Yes.
engaged with our own experience. So we were doing both, I was intended to do the functional and expression
Mhm.
way by incorporating in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Wow. I have chills. I mean, that is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. And
Yeah.
I also just want to say like that's it's a vulnerable thing to share. And so I just really
Mhm.
appreciate you opening up to us and allowing us in to your world.
Mhm.
Um, wow. So as it sounds like you're on this path and like this work is alive for you. And
Right.
I'm wondering, like, as you dream into the future, are
Mhm.
there ways that you see this work developing, growing?
Mhm.
What sort of specifics could you give us around where you envision this going?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm pretty practical. I don't study things just for study or to do something. I study in order to understand myself more.
Yeah.
I study to understand something more than what I know. So I studied dance and Korean dance, and then psychotherapy, and then now movement analysis. So there, for me, there's a connection with body and movement and psychology and dance. Dance and movement is similar but slightly different
Mhm.
because of the way I use it. Meaning dance, they're more rhythmical. It is more rhythmical, but also uh, dance is the specific form of movement. So movement is more overall, like my gesture, my facial expression, how my tongue or lips move to bring my words out, right? So yeah, so I feel like movement is more accessible to many different people, but
Mhm.
dance is also there are many people who crave for having specific dance skills.
Sure.
As a professional dancer, I understand the craving, and I understand because I also wanted to kind of challenge my movement skill, dance skills, so that I can dance with more variety of the movement expression or psychological expression through my physical functional body.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I wanted to do is I just started to offer 3 days workshop called Move to Heal to facilitate movement and then how it is connected to psychology, but also how it can be developed as a dance choreography.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I facilitate workshops to integrate or interconnect between movement and psychology and dance.
Yeah.
And then I have been doing contact improvisation in order to support people who have relationship trauma, relational trauma, like myself, meaning um, people who were disconnected from their biological parents and from their the original culture, original place that they were born. There's a disconnection that is um, fundamental disconnection of themselves. I
Yeah.
think it is connected.
Mhm.
So in order to heal that, in order to make some kind of connection with it, I think the contact improvisation in the dance form, based on what I learned, contact improvisation has been very useful to find a connection between myself and another person. But even though it's because it has such a physical contact, and then we share the approach is kind of random at the jam contact improvisation jam. You will meet people randomly. You don't specifically ask to the person, oh, would you like to dance, and there's a consent or things like that. Contact improvisation is more like improvisation, so there's no set a rule to connect with another person or others. It's kind of randomly happening and kind of quickly happening. So there are some risk. But if someone or myself would facilitate the process safely or slowly, I think it could be very therapeutic. So I use that as a therapeutic approach as well.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. So I just have one more question for you. I'm
Yeah.
just curious if you can talk a little bit about how your training at Integrated Movement Studies
Hmm.
supported you, or
Hmm.
many ways that perhaps your participation in the program
Hmm.
um, was able to support you in moving into these phases of your work.
Hmm. One word I could summarize is dynamism.
Dynamism.
Yeah. So throughout different approach, even though it's under the Lavan-Barton movement analysis, there are many different categories. The biggest category that we have body and effort, space, and shape. Through these categories, and then under each categories, there are many different approaches or methods. And those helped me to see what's accessible, what's not accessible.
Yeah.
So it helped me to understand myself, basically. Yeah, so one thing I did was, but I loved body half in the body category. My right side of body was very fluent. The expression was very fluent. And then that movement qualities associate with my identity as a dancer and also mother, which I felt proud of, which I felt confident and comfortable with.
Mm.
Whereas when I move my left side of body, upper body, but also lower body, by engaging my right side, by not engaging, by anchoring my right side, the movement quality often kind of sinking and enclosing, not necessarily reaching, enclosing, and also slow pace, perhaps contemplate or like water kind of quality, but very slow, but also careful kind of quality. And I associate with that as an adoptee or person of color and immigrant. All the identities that I felt somewhat underdeveloped or felt uneasy about.
Yeah.
So by noticing the contrast in my body, in my expression, my desire, I was able to interrogate more about myself by knowing what's accessible, what's not accessible, what's not developed yet, and how I wanted to develop those identities and movement into something like right side of movement.
Yeah.
So I started to learn more, analyze about my right side so that I can learn from right side to my left side. So left side can learn what's possible through my right side, which is not from other people, but from myself. My body and my expression, my desire, my need, all the things are the resource that I can kind of facilitate my development in my life.
Mm. Yeah. That's rich, rich stuff.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. If people are curious, do you have a website or a way that
Mhm.
would like to be contacted?
Yeah. So my website is movementflow.org. Yeah, you will find the information about myself, but also my background and also my services. I provide services to the individuals and then couples, but also groups. As for the groups, I would be I would facilitate workshops as a yeah. So I provide individual and couple and group therapy and workshop. For individual sessions, I invite them to the dance studio to facilitate the session And
Mm.
sometimes I visit them if it is needed or if it is more convenient for both of us. And then interestingly, I have gotten two different couples, and both of them wanted to increase their intimacy in relationship. So I facilitate individual activities, but also the couple connections through contact improv as well. And then for the group, not therapy, group education, the workshop, I facilitated in Korea and also in United States as well. And this July, I attended the Expressive Arts Therapy Association conference, and I provided a 3 hours workshop. And it was a great success because I focused on the individual needs first.
Mhm.
um, so throughout the course, I facilitated to engage with themselves, uncommon, which is very uncommon in common in Asian culture because of the collectivistic culture. So it was very well received for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So movementflow.org and Mihyun, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing where all of this goes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.